Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from Last Card on Info, coming at you after the conclusion of the Go Bowling at the Glen at Watkins Glen International, where unofficially, pending the results of post-race inspection, William Byron has pulled off his first road course victory, bringing the number 24 back to victory lane. Certainly a number and team that have been no stranger to victory lane here, and given Hendrick's recent continued dominance at this track here these last few years, that very much continued today, with Byron leading about 2/3 of the race distance today in a victory over Denny Hamlin. That is not, of course, the only story from this race. Last week's winner, Michael McDowell, finished last in this event. That will extend his lead in the overall Cup Series last place rankings. Now the 36th last place finish of his Cup Series career. It's going to be definitely a bit of a story there in that respect at the same time. Already getting questions about the last time a driver won a race and then finished last the very next week. In this particular case here, one of the more recent examples I could think of was back in 2009 when Matt Kenseth won both the Daytona 500 and Fontana, and then finished last with an engine failure in Vegas the next week. It's probably happened more recent than that. I'm going to have to do some more digging on the article there going forward here, but we'll have that information coming up here later on at the same time. Quite a bit to talk about on the show this week. Got a new video posted up on the channel. We had the Last Car logo on not one, but two cars this weekend. And we got to definitely talk about NASCAR Classics at the same time. No shortage of stuff from this week. That, as well as trivia and something for show and tell today. Going to be a packed show tonight. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll definitely get into that. Hopefully I didn't lose all my Canadian viewers after talking about the national anthem there earlier. It sounded good at the time, but I will confess that if it sounded the same as the American national anthem did right afterwards, I could definitely see the frustrations for sure. Checking out the race results here again. Another race where we had the very low attrition. I will have to say, Watkins Glen has kind of turned into that in these recent years. It's definitely not been the kind of event that would always have, the big crashes that we've seen in the past, or just, the usual kind of tangles. The Xfinity race was a bit of a different story in that respect, but really the last few Cup races here, I know Sears Point kind of gets criticized here by some for having races that don't seem as competitive or just have a dominant driver up front. I think this Watkins Glen race, and really the last few here, would probably be a good indicator as well of that not being entirely one direction. But that would be definitely another thing to talk about there too. And I'm just checking to make sure we don't have any reverb on the sound here. I do have the second screen set up. No, okay. I don't think it's playing off of that. Okay, good. Alrighty. Again, pending the post-race inspection rules here, William Byron, your winner. Denny Hamlin in the second spot, continuing a good late-season stretch here, as well as winning the pole for this race here. Very interesting is Steve Letarte pointing out that Denny was not exactly somebody to pick for Watkins Glen this weekend. I think he pretty much was motivated by that, not unlike Jeff Burton was at Dover back in 2006. But didn't quite pull off the victory, but 2.6 seconds, the unofficial margin of victory on that, actually rounding that up, 2.632 to be exact. Christopher Bell in the third spot. AJ Allmendinger finally getting back to his form at this track in particular by finishing in the fourth spot there. And Ty Gibbs getting his second career top five after nearly pulling off the Xfinity victory. And we'll absolutely talk about that in tonight's show when we talk about the Xfinity portion of the weekend. Martin Truex finishing in sixth. Chris Buescher in seventh. Tyler Reddick in the eighth spot there. Had a good qualifying run and a good completion to the weekend as well, with Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano, the Penske teammates, rounding out the top 10 finishers there. The battle for last place was interesting, despite the number of drivers that we had sent to the back of the field before the race started. It looked like at first it was going to be having Cole Custer there at the back. He had dropped to the back of the field there before the start, and gradually climbed his way up, finished actually in the 28th spot looking at the results here, not too far behind where Kyle Larson and Austin Dillon ended up after their last lap situation there, coming off of turn number 7. I still believe in the well, let's see, turn 7 in the broadcast respect. I still view it as turns 10 and 11 there through there, but that always gets confusing when you talk about the boot and everything in between. But you had Cole Custer in last place for parts of it. Ty Dillon back there. Harrison Burton had a spin in turn 5 and was basically back there in last place for most of the race distance there. Chase Briscoe, I kind of want to hear more about this. It looks like he may have actually pulled off the track in the final 7 laps. It's showing him in the 35th spot. I kind of want to pull up Pockrass's list of the results if it shows him there. Let's see here. Kind of want to check that out. No, it does show him running. Yeah, it still shows him under power. Although then again, I think Almirola's last place run from last week should probably be re-examined for him being out of fuel and clearly not moving at the time that the race finished. But maybe that's something to look at. But Briscoe had a very interesting situation during this race where they were talking about a problem with the left rear wheel, that they couldn't get it off the car. And I know it was mentioned earlier in the race where they said, like, well, there's not much we could do about that left rear. I thought it was a flat spotting at first, but then the team was elaborating further and saying that it was like welded on there and they couldn't change it, which would certainly explain why he was losing so much ground. You imagine how much force is exerted really on all the tires, but especially there with the cars skating out in these corners and everything. It must have been just a misery getting that car to the finish. I don't know if they ever actually got the wheel off. I'm hoping to kind of see some more updates from the team. But regardless, he ends up back in the 35th spot, 7 laps down. The only driver besides McDowell here that finished more than 1 lap down in the process. Harrison Burton climbed back up to finish 33rd as a result. Ty Dillon was in last place for a bit. Seemed like that was more on pit strategy. I know our Stephen Malozzi was asking about that and what was the reason he was dropping back from about 25th to 35th there. It looked like it was just a situation of just pit strategy. His tires were definitely older than other cars around him. But beyond that, I didn't hear anything in particular that was the situation with him. But Dillon ends up in 34th, Harrison Burton 33rd, and Chase Elliott with a monumental bad call here from the crew, a massive miscalculation on fuel mileage there, leaving him stranded on the back straightaway, losing a lap in the process, then getting back into the lucky dog spot on the final run there, and still not able to get back on the lead lap because there wasn't a caution towards the end of the race, and he ends up finishing in the 32nd spot. So now it comes down to Daytona for he and the other drivers that are well further back in points, and we'll find out what happens this coming Saturday at the Daytona race weekend. But a lot to go over before we get to that point too. But Michael McDowell, mentioning him, really seemed to be picking up right where he left off. At Indianapolis last week, had a very strong start to the race. Got the lead from Denny Hamlin there at the start. Got around Byron himself in his charge up to the second spot before that. And seemed like he was going to have a good car, led 17 laps of this race. But unfortunately, driving through too many pit boxes and then having the bad pit stop and then ultimately an electrical issue where it sounded like there was something really wrong in the front of the engine there, ultimately taking him out of the race. I mean, some days are just snake bit, and that's just the nature of it, really. You can be an absolute favorite for the win. You could have a win the previous week, and this can apply just as much to a big team or a small team. And especially these days where the Cup Series races have such low attrition, you can have a situation very much like this that will just, it could drop you to the very back of the field. It doesn't have to be a big issue. It could be a small issue or just a series of them. And unfortunately, that became the storyline of this race here. And again, pending the results of post-race inspection, we'll see how that all shakes out there in the final race results. It definitely felt like while Byron just kind of cruised from that point forward, especially after McDowell's penalty there, everybody else was just in a situation where they were kind of losing the race rather than him winning it. Although it seemed like Denny Hamlin and Ty Gibbs were doing a decent job keeping up with him. It just didn't kind of shake out for either of them to really contest the lead with Byron there at the same time, and didn't really expect a driver that had a lot of wins this year to pull off the victory here. And also mentioned a lot in the broadcast here that he hadn't won a road course race. Still, it's I think it is incredible that he's been able to pull this off. He is a past pole sitter at Sears Point. But again, I think it's a fine showing out of him there. And as they said in the broadcast, could be something that's going to be more of an issue going forward into the playoffs here. Don't really have too much to say about that aspect of the race here, for sure. But again, much like Indianapolis, I'm glad NASCAR showed a lot of restraint with the cautions. I think there's more that could be said about that in the Xfinity race yesterday. But on the Cup Series side of it here too, I really sense that, especially from Dale Jr.'s post, he was really trying to bring up, oh, there's a lot of grass on the track, there's a lot of this, there's a lot of that, and trying to kind of get NASCAR's attention when there seemed like there was some debris on the track there. I'm glad that wasn't so much of an issue. With Chase Elliott's car stranded on the backstretch, obviously they had to throw a caution for that. But it was good to see things actually play out. And again, in showing that, I think having two completely different races for Michael McDowell these last two rounds really shows, again, just how perfect you have to be when the race is that, goes green that long. And it doesn't have to be at, something kind of crazy like the Indianapolis road course. This here at a much more, traditional purpose-built road course. It's been on the circuit for a long time, and these teams have a lot of notes on, even though it's just the second race with this particular car. It's also something to still look at there. But you really got to make sure that just everything is perfect, and that means the pit crew just as much as the driver, just as much as the setup and anything else. And, if that doesn't happen, that could be just as much the reason for somebody not only not winning the race, but perhaps ending up at the back of the pack here. So, so a Michael McDowell last place finish after the win at Indianapolis, going to be the headline there for the LastCar article. Again, pending the results of post-race inspection. Mentioning the incident there between Kyle Larson and Austin Dillon. Dillon shows back in the 31st spot after his car stalled, basically, in that last corner coming to the stripe. He ends up the last car on the lead lap, a good 7 seconds behind Eric Almirola, who had his own incident in that corner earlier in the race. Eric Jones had kind of an issue there towards the end. I noticed he was kind of struggling back there with Harrison Burton and some of the other drivers there. It was kind of strange to see how that had played out for him, but he ends up back in the 29th spot there. Josh Bilicki getting a decent run, 27th there for the Live Fast Motorsports team. Andy Lowley was very much in the bottom five for a lot of this race, still managed to get out a 25th place finish there. Daniel Suarez, after having that incident there entering turn 5, ends up in 22nd. A lot of interesting runs to kind of look at here. Corey LaJoie was able to kind of get a good run over in the ARCA race on Friday. I believe he was the pole sitter for that race, if I'm not mistaken. But came back in this, qualified 10th, finished in 20th. Maybe not the best run that they wanted, but of course he had to go to the back of the field for unapproved adjustments before the start. Who's to say how things would have gone much better if he hadn't had to have that pre-race penalty. That's the unfortunate reality of all this. Mike Rockenfeller actually got another good run there for the Legacy Motor Club, finishing in 19th. Good to see, especially after Jones, his teammate, struggled so much. And Bubba Wallace defending his spot in the top 16 there with a fine 12th place finish there as well. Again, road courses, I'm sure he's very happy to have both these races behind him. But both times really performing as best he can. And this one here, we saw him actually be very competitive with his teammate Tyler Reddick. And given how well Reddick ran there, just 4 spots ahead of him in the 8th spot there, definitely something worth noting at the same time. Todd Gilliland just outside the top 10. It was mentioned in the broadcast. Glad to see him get a little screen time here. Every once in a while, he's surprising in that 38 car. Getting the great run at in the Indianapolis road course last year. And, of course, you think back to Daytona earlier this year and that big save he had in the twin 125s, I'm aging myself here, in the dual races, rather. It's going to be interesting to see if he can kind of back that up in the Super Speedway race this week and perhaps be an outside shot at bumping his way into the playoffs. Although, of course, that would be a bad news for Bubba Wallace in his respect there. But, of course, Bubba himself has a fantastic record at the plate tracks in Daytona in particular. So I think we're setting up to be a pretty dramatic finish to the regular season here. But definitely shades of Jeff Gordon. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that with William Byron's performance here, with it being his first road course win. Jeff Gordon's first road course win was at Watkins Glen. He won there before he ever won at Sears Point, and he seemed to own the keys to our home track here for all those years. Very impressive to see. And even though we only have one road course in the playoffs, that being, of course, the Charlotte Roval, the last one for this season, I think it's still a fine performance looking forward from there. Harrison had a broken upper control arm. Andrew Hayes, thank you for the heads up on that. No, that would make sense. He was concerned about something going sideways with that car there. I didn't know if that was actually ever diagnosed there during the race, but thank you for the update on that. He thought he had a flat tire going through turn 5. I know that was reported a little bit earlier there at the same time. Let's see here. Go Bowling got the contract extension with Watkins Glen. Yep, congratulations to them on that. Seems like, yeah. Well, yeah, definitely the exposure, the Xfinity race. Definitely got to talk about that at the same time there, too. All righty. Let me get this super chat here at the same time. Beast of Metal, thank you so much for the super chat here. Brutal run for McDowell, a true display of dichotomy from motorsports. Victory lane 1 week, extends his dubious record the next. On unrelated note, Alan Gustafson needs to be fired. Well, your words, not mine. Terrible. I mean, again, I've talked about this already a little bit with the Chase Elliott deal. An unfortunate mistake there, to say the least. But great reporting from the NBC USA group there. I got to say, the way they handled that entire portion of it, where they were describing like how many laps, you would have left on fuel, but how that varies by track. Like, okay, maybe this would have been okay under these circumstances at Charlotte or Martinsville, but here at Watkins Glen, with it being so much longer, and elevation changes and everything else. Great analysis there by Steve Letarte in particular, and a great analysis of the fuel cell. Again, it seems so strange. Here we are now a year and a half into having the next gen car. And here's another graphic that we are seeing for the very first time to see the actual fuel cell, the construction of everything around it. And most importantly, the reserve elements there, that they're actually raised up bin shaped, like box shaped deals there. And you actually kind of have an understanding of when the fuel cell's filled up, there's a reserve. So you have like the fuel that's coming out from the very bottom of the tank, but then you have what's actually reserved in those different boxes and what line goes to what. I'm going to have to watch the clip again. That's why I retweeted it on there, because there was so much more to it that I realized that there would be. I always kind of figured it was a gravity-fed thing, and you'd have like a trough underneath, like maybe like it would be like recessed into the bottom of it. So like, kind of like a fountain or something where, anything that was kind of sticking, any fuel that was left in like one corner of the cell or another would kind of go into those bins, and then it would kind of fill that up. But by having it as a box, then it's already, you're already kind of creating those reserves when you fill the tank to begin with. So you actually have something that you can actually depend on, which is probably why it's designed that way. That would make more sense. But yeah, I mean, again, I wouldn't have ever thought that it was actually designed that way. So wonderful, wonderful breakdown. Just like we saw with the pit stop that Suarez had it last week at Indianapolis and why that didn't work out. Great analysis on this. Again, I think the production, we're finally starting to see the quality of the actual broadcast catch up with the production level. We've seen that these last couple of weeks. And again, for as outspoken as I've been at these broadcasts, I think that's definitely a positive going forward. The play-by-play still needs to get there. I know even LE Productions 49 had a great video this week talking about great broadcasting, and even still in that video, which was quite good, by the way. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. But at the same time, still conceding that there's a lot of times in these broadcasts, they stumble over these lines and have trouble actually describing the action when it's happening, with a lot of, kind of notorious examples along the way. But, and again, this is kind of going to be more my transition to talk about NASCAR Classics, because I think that does a fantastic job of people kind of gaining an appreciation for the quality of broadcasts back then too. But that'll be another part to look at the same time. But we'll talk more about that a little bit later in the show. I'm gesturing this way because I actually have it pulled up on the second screen here. And I don't know if there's any issue with it being played or anything like that on a stream or anything. I imagine that there may be, but I don't know. We'll see how it kind of figures out. But I think that would be kind of interesting. I'd like to pull up a couple clips if I can get the audio working on this. I think that would be kind of a lot of fun to do here at the same time. Let's see here. Alrighty. Yeah. I mean, as to the crew chief, yeah, I don't know what the situation there is with Chase Elliott. That seems like a very basic mistake. And it's terrible because, Chase Elliott had at least a top 10 car. I don't think he had a race winning car, but he had something that could at least maybe on an outside chance challenge for a top 5 under the right circumstances. But he was probably going to finish 8th to 10th, maybe even just outside the top 10 in this race, which would still be a fine run, but not nearly as good as they were at Indianapolis last week. And yeah, he was my fantasy pick this week, and I was kind of hoping for more there too. But clearly the result of this was not really on the driver. It was just a miscue there, and that needs to be understood post haste. And if it ends up being what costs him a spot in the playoffs, it's going to be even more important there. But there's been so much adversity on the side of that this year. All the races that Josh Berry ran in it, the injury. With the snowboarding injury that Elliott had, and then the suspension after the Hamlin accident, and now finally starting to get some good runs, it becomes a situation of too little, too late, which is an unfortunate situation there at the same time. So we'll see how all that shakes out. But, again, I think as to the overall quality of this race, I liked it. I don't think it was quite as... I don't think it was quite as competitive as what we saw at Indianapolis. Both of these had one caution. Of course, the caution in this race was much, much later with the running out of fuel situation there for Elliott. I think the Indianapolis race was actually more competitive. I still think they should have the oval come back next year, and it sounds like from the promotions that we saw this past week, that's going to be the situation. But really, I think it was still pretty good. I think I really liked these long green flag runs. I liked seeing some strategy. I liked seeing things matter. I think, we're so much in the narrow of the sport where we have, the playoffs and you have the regular season, and like having a bad run doesn't seem to really matter anymore. Unless it's in the playoffs or unless you really need to get to the next round. That seems to be the only time the entire year that matters. Unless you're a guy that hasn't won the first part of the year and you got to win a race. Then a bad run is even just finishing second place. Remember Bubba Wallace at Michigan last year. It wasn't a bad run at all. One of the best runs of his career, but disappointing because he didn't have the win. So, it's almost to the point where good runs don't matter as much. So when you have a race like this that actually plays out and you have long green flag runs, I think it's much more engaging. But I do think that the Indianapolis race had more going on in it. Certainly the last place battle turned out to be more ruckus there, although this one here was still pretty engaging and unexpected because it was going to be a matter of who's going to blink first. We had something very similar to what we had at Richmond a few weeks ago there, where everybody's within 5 laps of the leader, and you can have a problem in the last 10 laps and still end up in last place. And ultimately that was what ended up happening with Michael McDowell in this situation, and given how demanding this track is. But I've always enjoyed Watkins Glen. This is always a track that circle on the calendar because, traditionally, I think this track is like a cage match. I think it rivals Bristol in terms of just being such a physical race and just a real risky and kind of dangerous track in other respects. Not to say that it's unsafe. I don't want to say it that way because I think there's a lot that, of course, has been done. Of course, discussing this in the J.D. McDuffie book, for example. A lot's been done over the years to really make the track a lot more safe. Pocono could be in the same category too. And there's a lot that could be said for that track. But with Watkins Glen, at its very core, you have, got that big downhill portion into turn 1. You have all these 90-degree turns. You have a long carousel at ends of long straightaways. Each one of these corners is just daring you to run off course. And the fact that these drivers are daring enough that they can run side by side into some of these corners or try to lean off of each other, it's just really impressive. And for them to run this race that fast without cautions, or with only one caution really, is even more impressive. As much as I don't like the fact that we don't have a bigger field out there, that we really didn't get that many road course specialists out there, good to see Rockenfeller and even Andy Lally to an extent have good runs. But again, not having the stage cautions, massive improvement, really made this a much more interesting race in that sense. I like that we just kind of, it almost kind of shows, well, especially at this point now where, the stage points are pretty much, if nobody's going to be able to point their way into the playoffs, this late into the season. It's going to be a matter of just trying to pull off a win. Some can actually definitely help you further down the line into the playoffs. But yeah, I really enjoyed how this, I really enjoyed how this one played out. It doesn't have to have a whole lot of cautions, and it doesn't have to have a lot of wrecks. I think that it's just a matter of just having really hard, aggressive racing. Like Allmendinger mentioned in his post-race interview, he said that it felt like he was doing qualifying laps the entire time. And I remember that made me think back to Wally Dallenbach back in the 90s, saying that at a track like a road course, like he was comparing it to Sears Point, you really have to be aggressive the entire time. You have to attack these corners as hard as you would at the end of the race, earlier in the race. So, of course, you're going to be, tearing up equipment, tearing up tires. These cars, I can't imagine. It may seem like even in a race like this that, maybe the cars don't go through that much. But I imagine if you went into any of these shops, tomorrow and saw them kind of take these cars apart or whenever they bring them back to the shops, there's a whole lot they got to replace and tear down and everything. And they could do that at any track, but especially here. I mean, you saw how much these cars were hopping around. Ryan Blaney's car in particular, I thought he was practically out of control. Every time he went into the runoff area off turn 1, it seemed like that car was just completely out of control, bouncing all over the place. And I kept waiting for him to lose control, but he didn't. And I think that's really what's great with a long run like this is you really see the skill of the drivers to be able to kind of keep it between the lines, or keep it on the runoff and not in the tire barriers, and actually keep the cars going. So, yeah, really, I would say a pretty competitive race there too. So we'll definitely looking forward. Daytona is going to be a whole different experience. We'll see how that shakes out. I hope we'll have a race as good as most of the Daytona 500 was this year. I think despite the ridiculous amount of commercials that we had in that, and I'm sure we're going to have in this one this Saturday, I really enjoyed the quality of racing we had at Daytona back in the spring, and I hope it stays the same for this year with everything else that's going to be happening on the same end too. So we got a great stretch of races here, and I think it's good to see. But again, I hope people aren't going to be too negative on this race, much like last week there, because there weren't a whole lot of cautions or wrecks or anything like that. I think, again, great road racing is you just see these drivers just going at it, and you want to see people reel each other in, or and it would have been great if somebody caught Byron, but Byron just had that good of a car. And if you had a restart or two, who's to say he wouldn't have pulled away again on those at the same time? So, well-deserved victory. Again, we'll wait and see what happens on inspection as to the results from there, but I think that's definitely a positive looking forward. We'll talk about the Xfinity Series race at the same time here. And we'll, like I say, we got some show and tell and trivia here for later in the show at the same time. Yes, unforgiving, RD Fox 76. Yeah, that's the word I would go for. Very much unforgiving. I think that's a perfect way to describe it, because at Watkins Glen, if you just we talk about small mistakes costing you a win at Indianapolis, which is very true. But at this track, if you make a small mistake, you're going to have just a big wreck in your car. And when you have a race that has so few cautions as this, it really is amazing, because it just shows how on point you need to be. It was very surprising that when Daniel Suarez spun in turn 5, that he managed to avoid having any serious damage. But again, it didn't draw a caution, and he ends up back in the pack, and that's pretty much where he was the rest of the day. Harrison Burton, same thing. Spins on the exit at turn 5. Could have very easily been a situation that would have cleared him out. But again, got back out there, changed the tires, and still finished the race back in the pack, but with the car in one piece. So, again, I think that really, really speaks to it. So yeah, unforgiving, I would definitely agree, would be the right way to describe that at the same time. Yeah, last bro catching up, Death Killer. Yep, you're right. Yeah, he picked Suarez for this week here, and I picked Elliott. And yeah, neither of us really did that well in the old fantasy league, but regardless, that was the outcome for today. So I want to kind of get into the Xfinity Series race here. We had a last place finisher that really didn't get a whole lot of attention, and a battle for the lead that absolutely did. You'll see I'm wearing the Ty Gibbs shirt today. I was very interested to see how Gibbs was going to perform after his near victory in the Xfinity Series race yesterday and qualifying in the top 5. He did end up getting in our top 5 here. I believe he ran as high as 3rd in this event. but was very impressed with how he performed this weekend, and great job shaking that off from yesterday. Now, I will still concede that he really shouldn't have been in yesterday's race, much like Ross Chastain, who got a top 5 for Mario Gosselin's team. As happy as I am for Gosselin's team, it would have been much better if they just kept Alex Labey in that car or had another series regular in that one instead. But, it is what it is, and it's still a good performance for that team. I guess we could, there's a number of different ways we could approach this one at the same time. Yes, Blaine Perkins was your last place finisher in that one. His first ever last place finish in both the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series. This may be a point of a bit of a surprise, because actually coming into this Xfinity race, he had more bottom 5s and bottom 10s than anybody else that had not yet finished last in the Xfinity Series. So once he finished last once, he jumped all the way up to third in the actual last car championship standings. And if he finishes last just one more time, if he finished last this weekend at Daytona, he would immediately take the lead in the last car Xfinity Series standings. So one storyline to watch in Friday's race as well for that. And then with the Hour Motorsports team. It was also a nice opportunity to discuss Perkins' career a bit more. Obviously, if you Google him now, the first thing you're going to find is going to be that big wreck at Talladega, and understandably so. A lot of drivers, including Michael McDowell, have been very much well known for having a spectacular accident that ended up kind of defining their career. Now, in this case here, certainly glad Perkins, like McDowell, was able to walk away from that one, although Perkins did miss a race in the process. But to get back out there in the number 02 car, this one here, we had the last place battle between Stanton Barrett, again, a subject for a future episode of Rise of the Field Fillers. He was at the back of the field there, a couple of other drivers as well. Ryan Ellis's car stalled at one point, was dropping him back there. But Perkins dropped out after just 11 laps with transmission issues. Team was trying to make a repair. They did not have a replacement transmission, and they ended up dropping out of the race about a quarter of the way into the distance. And it was the result of his first last place run. The first last place run for the number 02 at Hour Motorsports there since Bristol, I believe, 2 years ago. So we don't really see this team back there that often. Perkins is kind of going back to Perkins' career itself. It was interesting to kind of talk about him doing so well in the West Series. I remember when he made his debut in the Xfinity Series at Phoenix, where he came so close to winning the ARCA West Championship. He came out in Phoenix. He had a good run in the 23 car. I think he finished like 24th that day, which is pretty good for a debut, especially if you're kind of skipping the Truck Series. I thought that was pretty impressive. And then, of course, later that year, he had the stage win at Talladega. And he went back to the Truck Series with Cody Rohrbaugh's team. That didn't go well. He drove for SS Greenlight earlier this year, and that team has just had all kinds of problems this season. Those poor guys there have had all kinds of problems at the Bobby Daughter effort there. And I think this year with Perkins at the beginning of the season was part of that there, unfortunately. I don't really think it was Perkins on that one. I think it was probably something going on with that program. But getting back to Chris Sauer's team, I think it was a great effort. He made a few starts with them last year, got his first top 10 at Martinsville, and has had some pretty good runs. In spite of the fact that he had the last place run here, he's been right back to finishing in the top 20 here and there, like he had at Road America and at the Chicago Street Course. Yes, that race was cut short, but still, I think I think it's interesting to see him perform well, and good to see that team actually have some good runs. Unfortunately, this one wasn't meant to be, and finished out after 11 laps. Jeremy Clements, Josh Williams, Riley Herbst, and Max McLaughlin rounding out your bottom 5 in that one. McLaughlin with a pretty hard hit there in turn 7 or turn 11, depending on which you prefer. Riley Herbst with a track bar issue there that dropped him out after what looked like a transmission issue was leading up to that there. Then, of course, the rear of the car was kind of moved around a bit. We saw this out of Sage Karam from a video that was posted earlier today. Karam very nearly got another top 10, but finished back in 15th despite that issue there, and continues a very strong series of runs, both on the road courses and off with multiple teams. Still a driver that you really got to watch. Josh Williams with an unfortunately embarrassing situation. His radio came disconnected and is plugging his headphones back in, ended up rear-ending Stephen Parsons' car. Parsons continued on to finish back in the order in 33rd with brake issues, but you had Josh Williams finishing in 36th in the process. Jeremy Clements had a flat tire, slid off track there with Allmendinger. and ended up finishing back in the order there with suspension problems at 37th. Very physical race in this one, and certainly more cautions and more incidents along the way, but still some decent performances from other drivers throughout the field there. Sammy Smith coming back from some damage to the nose of his car there, finished back in the 18th spot. But looking further ahead, we got to certainly talk about JD Motorsports and getting both their cars into the top 13, which is a massive effort, especially given the fact that both those teams had troubles going into Turn 5 this weekend. Kyle Weatherman actually hit the wall in Turn 5 in practice and damaged the left front fender. They had to tape the car back together, very reminiscent of what happened with Anthony Alfredo with his hung throttle back at Sonoma. But he ends up coming back to finish in 13th. Brennan Poole had one of the first incidents of the race, getting bumped sideways and bounced off the Armco barriers in exiting the chicane there. Still came back and finished in the 12th spot there. Very impressed with both drivers there for JD Motorsports. And on top of this, both the white car that Poole had and the bright red car that Weatherman had no sponsor at all on either of them. I mean, your heart just breaks for those guys. They work their tails off. They're one of the most dependable programs out there. They've helped springboard so many drivers' careers over the years. And this just shows another example of it. Very rare that they get both their cars in the top 20, especially on a non-super speedway. But hopefully this effort gets them some more attention going forward there at the same time. Jeb Burton finishing in the 10th spot. I was actually reached out by Craig Partee and his wife Jennifer earlier this week. You may recall Craig Partee is actually the team owner of Fleur de Lis Motorsports in the Xfinity Series back in 2010 and 2011. For those of you who are longtime readers of the site, especially my weekend preview article, you may have noticed from the last few of these that the Partees have come up there as sponsors now of different teams. They originally sponsored Carl Long's team the last couple of years. Unfortunately, Long's team was not able to make it out to Watkins Glen this week, so they jumped over to Jordan Anderson's effort. Partee is a very interesting story in his own right. He lives up in upstate New York. In 2020, he was working on fixing up an old barn on his property, or I believe he was knocking down a portion of it, and the barn actually collapsed on him, and he actually had to be rescued out by a local evac crew that came in there. They flew in by helicopter and rescued him out of the debris from that barn and saved his life, which is tremendous. And every year since then, he's tried to sponsor cars in the field and really kind of promote, I believe it's Mercy Life Medical. That was the effort that came to his rescue, and he puts the tail number of the helicopter on the car that he sponsors. Now, the thing with Jordan Anderson this year that was even more significant, and of course, this is another story that's coming into the Xfinity Series race this week, is of course Jordan Anderson's anticipated return to competition, this time in an Xfinity car with Larry McReynolds as crew chief for Daytona this week. On top of this was very much this Watkins Glen effort. And Jordan Anderson jumped on board with this because, of course, he had that fiery accident at Talladega last year, and he himself owes his life to the efforts of the medical professionals there that got him helicoptered out of the track and treated, and being able to even be back at the track later that year. Saw him at Phoenix just last year. One thing I didn't realize until reading the press release that the Partees provided was that actually two of the members of the crew that rescued Jordan Anderson actually lost their lives in a helicopter crash earlier this year. And so they wanted to definitely pay tribute to those first responders as well. And that was part of that sponsorship on the number 27 this week. So it very much was close to both Jordan Anderson and the Partee family to have this sponsorship on the 27. And I definitely wanted to kind of give an extra mention to that here on the show at the same time, because I thought it was a tremendous story. And I hope it got covered on the broadcast this weekend. I didn't see much of the practice or qualifying in the lead up to it. But I thought it was incredible. But on top of all of this, Jeb Burton gets a top 10 finish with that. So hopefully got them some extra exposure there at the same time. So that would be another effort there from them. So working our way back up through the ranks here at the same time, Connor Mosack. I got to give another shout out to this kid. I'm very impressed with him. I know he had that incident with Greg Van Alst in the ARCA race at Charlotte this year. Kid trying to make things happen at the same time there. But I am so impressed with this guy and the Sam Hunt effort here. We've seen double top 10s out of this effort with him and Kaz Gralla and the other drivers that have rotated into the number 24 car here. But Mosak, much like at Portland, had a incident at the very beginning of the race. Mosak, in this case here, slipping off of the track there in the inner loop and coming back out there. But actually getting a good run here this time around too. Gets a 5th place finish there in the Sam Hunt racing effort at the same time. Tremendous effort there for both driver and team. This is another kid that, I think is going to be really exciting to watch. Hopefully he gets a more steady ride there. I think he's made a pretty good case to get a full-time ride there, if not with Sam Hunt, than with somebody else out there. Because it seems like his name comes up more and more whenever I'm talking about small teams or different drivers having good runs here at the same time. So kudos to him. So this kind of leads us into the, the same story here with the finish of the race itself. So let's definitely talk about, we definitely got to talk about what was happening there at the front of the field. Now, I think, frankly, let's start at the top to bottom here. Sam Mayer versus Ty Gibbs is an ongoing saga that is probably going to be continuing on, going forward, into the playoffs here and perhaps to even the day where Mayer will, I'm sure, work his way into the Cup Series at some point. Obviously no love lost between these two. We saw the fist fight between them in Martinsville, and that was the situation there. But in this case here, I thought the battle that Ty Gibbs had when he pulled off the lead, I know I'm wearing the shirt, but I'm trying to stay objective here. I thought that that move that he made to get back up there and get around Justin Allgaier and Sam Mayer and get up there, I thought that was tremendous racing. It was very physical. He absolutely made contact with Sam Mayer as he went by. And Mayer kept sticking his nose in there too. And I think it takes two to tango when it has a situation like that. There was a great move where Gibbs comes downhill into turn 1. Mayer throws the block and Gibbs backs off and then charges again on late braking and gets in there and puts it, and gets in that situation. I thought that was remarkable driving on Gibbs' part there. And then going through the S's, it narrows up and it's very treacherous to run too wide through there. You got to settle position really quick. So you can't sit too wide through that whole thing there. Because, generally what's going to happen is what happened. You're going to have contact between the two of them, and you're going to have a winner and a loser in that case. So I didn't have any issue, really, with how Ty Gibbs had the lead. And this is from somebody that does not like having Cup Series regulars in the Xfinity Series. And again, I'm willing to make concessions for drivers that aren't in the playoffs or weren't in the playoffs the previous year. I'm not going to go down that road because I seem to say that on every week's show. But I didn't really have an issue with it. I thought it was a clean pass. It was aggressive. But it was tremendous. Now, when Sam Mayer goes into the corner and he says he wheel hops and he actually plows into the 19 hard enough to hit crinkle the right rear fender of the 19 car and spin him around. No, I wasn't, frankly, really that impressed with it. I don't think that was a impressive move in the same sense. Does it mean that, it's like, oh gosh, he should be suspended, he should be this? No, I'm not going into any of that. I think that's absurd. I think you should have physical racing, and you should want there to be rivalries between drivers. I'm glad Sam Mayer is there. I hope that this is something that does continue on, and, you get to, learn more about these drivers, and they do have a rivalry going there at the same time. I think Mayer probably could have passed him clean at the same time and still pulled off the victory. Now, so Sam Mayer now has his second Xfinity Series win. But this is where we have to talk about the other events that led up to the finish of the race. And I almost did a show on this yesterday because I think it was so much more. There was a lot that was going on that is as good as the broadcast was today in covering every little thing there. I feel like the broadcast turned kind of a blind eye to a couple of things from yesterday. So first and foremost, the door foam that was ripped out of John Hunter Nemechek's car at the very end of the race. In the past, it seems like every time somebody has foam ripped out of the door of their car, they can't keep going. That's it. They're done. It's not safe to run the car without any door foam in there. But then the broadcaster is like, oh, there's a little foam at the bottom of the door. It's like, that's like the whole, little foam just kind of fell down there. They can pull it back up and they can tape it back on there and all that. It's like, when have we ever seen that happen? It seems like to me, and maybe this is just in the Cup Series, because I know the foam it looks different than the way it does in the Xfinity Series, but I could have sworn the last few times that they had a team that had the door ripped open and a lot of the foam's missing, they're done. And it doesn't matter if you're a big team, small team, or anything else. So I found it very unusual. And this is a track where you really don't want to mess around with that, especially if we're setting up for an overtime finish where somebody can get hit in the door very easily. Do you really want to have that safety element really limited in that case? And I know for the case of a driver like John Hunter Nemechek, that would be frustrating because, you tried to avoid a wreck and it ripped the door of your car open. You lost the foam on the track and now you're done for the day as a result of that. But, hey, welcome to the club. There's a lot of stuff in the crash clock that shouldn't be used to eliminate drivers either, but still eliminates them too. I think Nemechek should have been parked. I think that would have been the safest thing to do. And I think it was either a missed call or, something just wasn't communicated right. And even if there wasn't any precedent for that, there really should be, because that's dangerous. I mean, you wouldn't do that at Daytona. You wouldn't do that at Talladega. You shouldn't do that anywhere. It doesn't matter what the track is. I thought that was tremendously unsafe. Now, the other one that I have a little bit less of a problem with, because it's happened before, and we've seen it the other direction too, there was clearly oil all over that track at the end. Oil and stay dry and everything else. And NASCAR could have thrown a caution, and they could have even had an overtime finish again, and cleaned up the track properly there. But they waited and waited and waited, and you got cars slipping and sliding all over the place. And yeah, it's exciting to see. You had the lead end up trading hands between Sheldon Creed, and of course, Creed, I really do think is kind of in that same category as Ryan Sieg, where, he just seems to have just terrible luck every time he's close to pulling off a victory there. But they really should have thrown a caution there at some point. They had plenty of time to do it before the leaders got to the starting line there at that time. They had it all over the place, especially over in turn 7. For them to just not do that, I think it was just ridiculous. And I don't know how much of it is like in 2012, where we had that situation where Bobby Hamilton was blowing up, and of course you have that legendary finish. I guess maybe they're thinking, they could try to recreate that. But that's such a dangerous precedent. You don't want that happening too many more times, because at some point you're going to have a real serious accident. Again, Watkins Glen, what we were just talking about earlier, an unforgiving track. If you get a little bit off track there, you can have a real serious accident real quickly. We see how closely these guys get to all these walls, getting through there, even just making an ordinary pass. So that needs to be looked at too. So I was a little disappointed in the officiating at the end of that Xfinity race. As exciting as it was, as dramatic as it was, and as entertaining as it was, there's got to be a limit there somewhere, because I think that was a bridge too far. So certainly with the foam, and with the issue with the fluid on the track. And yes, I do draw a distinction between that and what I was talking about earlier today in the Cup race, where I think that the driving through too many pit stalls is a really ticky-tacky kind of penalty. Not just because it was involving McDowell. I think if it had, I always say, whenever it comes up here, Laspro and I have things like, it's my favorite penalty, driving through too many pit boxes. Oh yeah, we don't want anybody driving through 4 boxes instead of 3. It's like, there's nothing magical about 3 pit boxes. If they made it 4 pit boxes, and that's the rule, if they made it 6 pit boxes, and that was the rule, I get you don't want to have anything that's dangerous for the pit crew members at the same time. But that's going to be the situation no matter what the rule. That's the situation if you have it in 3 boxes. So, is anybody going to be driving through all of them? No, I think that's ridiculous. I don't think anybody would do that because, of course, there's all kinds of garbage and debris in the pit stalls. I think the drivers are able to police themselves well enough as how much ground they need to get in there. I just think it's kind of another one of those rules that we talk about on the show here all the time. It very much is like the yellow line rule. It's like the locking bumpers rule. It's something that these drivers can do that they wouldn't even really think about. They would just do. It's like just part of racing, but we have to officiate every small aspect of it here. So now it's a thing, and it's unfortunate. In the case of Michael McDowell saying, yeah, he had way more other problems besides that really ended his run. But I think it's kind of ridiculous with everybody. It gets included there. So I think I think it's one of those things that the drivers are able to police themselves well enough. You have a pit road speeding penalty, speed limit that's strictly enforced, and that's understandable. And you really try to make things as safe as possible for the pit crew members at the same time. But guy goes through 4 stalls instead of 3. Like I just think that's ridiculous, especially when there's nobody else there. When you have a road course here and you got drivers that are pitting on different sequences too. So I don't really have as much of a problem with that. So there's rules that are, so this is very much, I think that was kind of the big takeaway from another aspect between Saturday and today, is, the difference between, what's a really important rule and what isn't. I think keeping the foam in the doors of the cars and cleaning up fluid on a track that usually has massive accidents on it is a little bit more important than how many pit stalls somebody drives through. I get they probably include that in there to make it more competitive, or maybe to include some gamesmanship in there and all that. But I don't know. It's not my favorite, but of course I have a whole list of those things, and that list just seems to kind of grow from one point to the next. Oh gosh. And we saw also the interview. People are mad after that Xfinity race too. Austin Hill is not happy with Sam Mayer. Hill, of course, was in position to sneak away another victory that it seems like when everybody else screws up, when the JR Motorsports cars inevitably have whatever problem that they have this week, and the Joe Gibbs cars get spun out of the way out of a race that they've dominated, that opens the door right back there for Austin Hill to come in there and snatch the victory away while Sheldon Creed loses again. That seems to be the way. That seems to be almost the script for a lot of these Xfinity Series races here, is one way or the other. It's just so often that you can't catch the Gibbs cars, or and then you can't get to them either because the Junior Motorsports cars fill out the rest of the top 5, and then everybody else is scrapping for what they can scrap. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see coming up this weekend, especially given how good Austin Hill is at Daytona, the super speedways in particular. He's going to be one to watch at the same time. But, yeah, a lot of stories there, especially for the Xfinity race. A lot to take away from it. But, yeah, really got to say, entertaining weekend of racing. 2 very different races at the exact same track. 3 different ones. You really got to talk about the ARCA race. I just saw highlights from that. My goodness, I got to pull up that kid's name again because I know I'm going to butcher it here. But you had a long race. It ends up finished with the actual. That's not the right event there. With rain in the area. Zilich, right? Zilich. Zilischsch. That's the other move there that I know got talked about a lot. I mean, was that a fair move? I think that was downright clean compared to what happened to Sam Mayer with Sam Mayer's incident with Ty Gibbs there. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that Zilich didn't pull off the win. Kind of reminiscent of what we had at Sears Point in 2012, where Kurt Busch had clipped one of the tire barriers and messed up the handling of the car and was trying to get back up there and still almost pulled off the victory in that. There was some fantastic photography that came out there showing sparks coming from under the kid's car. It's unfortunate he didn't pull off the victory after leading 34 of 42 laps, but a tremendous run for him too. Jesse Love pulls off another victory there at Watkins Glen, and that was definitely the big story from that one. But in between all this, speaking of ARCA and Xfinity, I want to give a particular thank you to a couple of people here this week. You'll notice, as I just posted this morning as well, the LastCar.info logo appeared on a couple of cars this weekend. And I got big thanks to the both of them on that. So first things first would have to be the actual Mike Harmon's effort there, the CHK Racing effort, with Casey Carden attempting to qualify for his race. Unfortunately, didn't make the show, but I can't thank Harmon enough for putting the logo on the car there this week. Those of you that are wondering where that came from, that's actually relating to another video that I'm working on. Harmon and I were actually talking about doing a project on a story that he wanted to talk about here, and I don't have too many more details on that. I'm going to kind of make a post on the Patreon about that before I go more into it, but that's where that came from on that. So look forward to that here on this channel. As to the other sponsor that I also have to give big thanks to would be to the one and only, the Pizza Man, Brayton Laster, put my logo on his car for the race at Springfield today. And he just reached out. He's just a big fan of the site, and he wanted it on there. And he said that, yeah, if he pulled off the victory, that he was going to keep it on there. But one way or the other, was very happy to have that. I actually kind of changed the decals for both of these. So the little car that's in the picture was a number 74 car on Harmon's, and I had like a pizza designed car on Brayton Laster's here. So I'll show those pictures there at the same time. But yeah, I think that was really cool. I really appreciate the opportunity. We weren't really planning on doing any other sponsorship this year after the Brad Perez sponsorship, and then also with Bill Maher's kid in the Bandoleros here earlier this year. Both just gave tremendous exposure this week, and I really enjoyed that. But yeah, very much unexpected. These came up almost at the exact same time, and we had that this week, so that was really exciting. So I hope you guys enjoyed that as well. I still need to check out the results from Springfield. I didn't see how Brayton did in that one, but if you guys saw that, definitely let me know in the chat there at the same time. I'll have to pull that up there too. But that was really cool, and it was really kind of a thrilling week here at the same time. We had the big thanks to Greg Fielden as well. Sent the copy of his book 40+4, the fourth volume of his famous 40 years of stock car racing, chronicling every race in Cup Series history. Had a tremendous tribute to JD McDuffie there. We had a great conversation a while back. A person doing a podcast reached out to me. I believe there was a connection through Brian Hallman because he was mentioning my work to him as well. And we had a great conversation there, and he was interested in the JD book. So I sent that over, and he sent this over, and that was very nice of him. So if you're watching, Greg, thank you very much as well. That was a tremendous honor. So it was really a big week. It was pretty crazy. I mean, actually, we had kind of a lot happen on this. And on top of all this, too, we had our newest video out. I want to talk about that at the same time. The Chuck Bound video. Thank you, everyone who has checked that out. It's performing pretty well. We've crossed the 19,000 mark on subscribers yesterday. So big thanks to those of you who are following the channel. I still say I get a lot of credit for people talking about NASCAR Man's videos. And again, I always say, like, look, that those are videos that he writes and those are his scripts. What videos I do and what he does are very different things. I'm just very fortunate to be narrating both of them. But I always say, look, if you're subscribed to me, you should subscribe to NASCAR Man History, and if you're subscribed to NASCAR Man, you really should subscribe to my channel too. You'll get, if you like one, I'd like to think you'd be able to like the other one too. And I think that tide has lifted both boats, which is great. So that's usually the way that it kind of bring that up there at the same time. But yeah, I was glad to get that out, and I didn't anticipate it working so well with NASCAR Man's video where he put together his Davey Allison tribute that came out just recently. Obviously, in this one, since a lot of it takes place in 1994, you hear a lot more about Bobby Allison and what they were doing at the team after the passing of both Clifford Allison and Davey Allison, and really trying to organize this team. And at the same time, they had a lack of sponsorship, and they really needed to find a different driver because Jimmy Spencer left to go over to Junior Johnson's team, and what was going to happen from there. And in between was Chuck Bound, a driver I do remember being in the field at Sears Point that year. And that name's always kind of rattled in the back of my mind. I didn't watch the Busch Series that much back then, so I wasn't as aware of his exploits out there. People mentioning also, I got some comments there in the chat that were very interesting, talking about the times that he was a relief driver that got some limited exposure in the Cup Series as well. So that was very interesting. But, it's interesting. We talk about, that's why I showed Josh Berry at the very beginning of the video. It's usually presumed that if you're a really top level driver in one series or another, that you're going to get to the Cup Series. But, again, Josh Berry is a perfect example of a guy that very well easily could have been overlooked his own career. And it was very fortunate that Dale Jr. noticed his career and kind of gave him some help and brought him under the fold and kind of brought him out there. And now he's one of the top contenders in the Xfinity Series, a guy that's made the championship 4. And now is a guy who's going to be taking over Kevin Harvick's car next year. Very much like that with Chuck Bound. Here's a guy that went back all the way to the 70s that was running Winston West races, companion events with the Cup Series, and, was running really well. Got top 10s very early on, won championships. And I think what's I didn't emphasize this enough in the video, but I really want to emphasize this here. He was most popular driver in just about every series he ran in. So it wasn't like people didn't like him or didn't know who he was or he was controversial. He was just, you hear this from his interviews. He's just a very laid back, kind of affable kind of guy that people just, really enjoyed seeing compete. He may have had some moments, that, I've heard some people that were saying that he kind of got mixed up and he got in some crashes and stuff when he was running in Canada. But up there, he was a champion as well, it must be said. So, it was a fascinating story, and it really showed just a really long tour to get back into the Cup Series. And the fact that he got into Cup for a full-time ride in 1994, which was really at the very point that the sport really started to kind of begin its youth movement. Right when the sport became kind of national, and you had the rise of Jeff Gordon. Of course, his first 2 wins came that year, and Bound was racing against him in one of them, and actually had one of his best runs in the 600 that Jeff Gordon won in May of 94. It was again, my favorite aspect of NASCAR history was hidden history in plain sight. This was something that was happening, but just doesn't get talked about that much. And I thought it was a fascinating story to show how good Bobby Allison's team was, even without sponsorship, how good Jimmy Fennig has always been as a crew chief, and how durable he made those cars that, they would have these wrecks or incidents and they'd still finish maybe just a few laps down, or they'd still be really competitive. Winning a pole at Bristol, running well at Martinsville from the backstretch pit road. He was an impressive story. And I think it was something that really needs to be kind of remembered in very much the same way as Johnny Benson's effort in 2000, or, other drivers that have excelled with unsponsored cars. Alan Kowicki in first part of 1991 comes to mind. Several other examples that have come through the sport, and they become increasingly rare by 1994. So I really wanted to do that. That was very much a passion project. I'm big thanks to Brian Hallman at the BRH Racing Archives for all the photos and material that he provided that really helped that story come alive, which I really wanted it to, because there's a lot of viewers that I feel watch this channel or watch NASCAR on YouTube. They were too young to remember that, and I'm glad to kind of bring that back in there. And I don't know if Chuck's seen it. I didn't interview him myself. That's where I have to give a big shout out to the podcasters there that did the interview there, the Uncommon Deeds podcast that did the interview with Chuck Bound. They did a fantastic job. They basically asked the same questions I would have asked, and they were extremely supportive of this project. I made sure they had advance access to the video when it was done, and I was very glad that they allowed me to use segments from their podcast in the interview, because I think he gave some very interesting answers, especially about that Pocono accident and what effect that had on his career back in 1994. So I hope you guys enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed putting it together. I have a couple other videos that I have in mind that I'd like to have put together. I've actually been in the process of reeling in these next couple of videos here. The next 2 big videos that I have in the works are both episode 7 of 500 Days, which covers the spring race at Darlington, and the next episode of Rise of the Field Fillers on Mach 1 Incorporated. Originally 500 Days was getting more traction, but now this past week, the Field Fillers episode has kind of picked up momentum. I've got the video bracketed with the interviews with Larry Gunselman, so I think that'll probably be the next video that I release. I'd like to have it done by the beginning of next month. That's just kind of a vague concept of it there. It may be earlier, maybe later, I'm not sure. But that's what I'm working on at the moment here to get that out for you guys. So I hope you look forward to that. So there is going to be more field fillers coming up, and I know I get a lot of questions about that. So rest assured that is still very much in the works here. I'm just going to kind of pull out my phone here because I want to see if I got, there's a couple other notes I wanted to mention here on the show. Okay, we talked about that. Oh, gosh. Just look at my list here, too. Speaking of YouTube, congratulations to Mike Joy and his son Scotty for starting their YouTube channel. Definitely check them out as well. If you haven't checked that out, I subscribed to them this week. And definitely for the passion that the both of them have for cars, I know that's going to be a good channel there at the same time. Congratulations to Kenny Schrader for winning a Pinty Series dirt race earlier this week. We talked about Schrader in the context of other videos there at the same time. Again, it keeps him young. It's good to see him staying out there and staying competitive. Apparently now today, running against Frankie Muniz himself in the other ARCA race there in Springfield. And so you got the same drivers that really ultimately met each other back at Daytona, as a driver and fan back then, now competing against each other as competitors. Pretty cool to see. I know NASCAR Man made a post on that earlier today, so that was really exciting. Yeah, so I think that's a big part of that too. So, let's see. Oh, yes, I saw this. I'm seeing this in the comments here, and I'm seeing a lot of questions about the storm coming through here. I definitely want to assuage any concerns on that. So, first of all, thank you. I appreciate the concerns. I think for us, we're probably okay on that one. What we have is we did get some lightning through here last night. As the first kind of whip of that storm kind of came up there. We're kind of in like the South Lake Tahoe area, kind of between Lake Tahoe and Sacramento, kind of in that area. And I know they're getting hit pretty hard there too. We're doing okay. The skies are gray out there right now. Not too threatening out there last I checked. But we're hunkering down as best as possible, but I think we're doing okay. But I do appreciate the concerns. Definitely extend those to anyone else in the path of that, because I know that's been real devastating, especially down in Southern California and Baja California, down in Mexico as well. They've been hit much harder than we have here, at least so far. We are expecting some heavy weather here tomorrow coming in, but it should be within. We should be okay as far as I know. But I do appreciate the concerns. If anything on that changes, I'll definitely let you know on that at the same time there. Let's see here. Let's see. All right. Brayton finished 10th. Okay, great. Okay, glad. I'm glad he had a good run. I know they have like kind of smaller fields out there, but that's fantastic. Yeah, big thanks to Brayton again. He did a great job on that. I should pull up the picture. Let me pull up the picture here. So I was going to switch over to our second screen here in a little bit, and we'll do trivia here momentarily. Let me pull this. Okay, you can't see this. I got to move this over. I'm trying to do this with the touchpad. I've never liked using touchpads as a mouse. I always have problems with those. Let me make this bigger, and then you can see that. Okay, here we go. Let me pull that over here. This thing is, I swear, this computer needs to have like 2 more USB ports at least. Okay, let's see if this works. There you go. Okay, so yeah, here's the logos that I sent over to both Brayton Laster and to Mike Harmon there for that. And you'll see that the cars are very different. Oh, not very, well, I mean, slightly different there for that to add there at the same time. So I had a little bit of fun with that. I didn't know Laster was running the 31 car instead of his 01 that he's usually run with Andy Hillenberg's team. But I definitely added like kind of a pizza pattern on the car there. So those are the ones, if you see in those pictures, this is what those look like up close. I haven't ordered other stickers there yet, but if there's interest, if people, I know we got a couple of sales on the lastcard.info store from some stickers this week. If people want sticker versions of these, I can make those if anyone's interested. You could drop me a DM or anything like that, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, we made those this week. So those are the 2 stickers that showed up this week. Of course, the top one there on Casey Carden's, top one there on Brayton Laster's, and the bottom one on Casey Carden's car. I didn't know they were running the blue and white car, so I just went for the black one there initially. But I do have, like I said, something in the works there with Mike Harmon, and we'll have some more updates on that at the same time. So that was kind of just a fun little deal there. Very unexpected, because I heard from both of them almost, I think it was the same day that both of those came together. And I really didn't expect them to give me a big spot. I was expecting just kind of what we did with Brad Perez and just do the B pillar. But they both really surprised me there, and much like we did with Bill Maher's son there on the side of the car there, or Bill Maher's car, excuse me, not the comedian, the crew member there at Front Row Motorsports. But yeah, so we got that one too. So let me pull up this too. Now, at the same time, while I have the second screen pulled up, we got to talk about this. NASCAR Classics. I almost decided to just make an entire show about just this. This is fantastic. I first want to mention here at the same time. This is easily, I think, I was mentioning a little bit earlier this year about some things that NASCAR has put together. I liked that NASCAR came up with the point system that, if you buy any merch or you buy tickets, you get points. You can get either free access to wave the flag at qualifying, or you can get signed merch and all that. Great idea. I liked that, they had, the onboard cameras on all the cars. So you can actually see what's happening throughout the field. And then this got leaked, and I suddenly got all these messages. I think, what was it, Tuesday night? I got a message on Patreon about this. I got a message on Twitter about this. I got all these messages here, and I was just coming home from work. And I'll tell you what, it did make it challenging to kind of work on videos this week here, because this all came up here. And that initially, it just looks like it's on top of this having the top 75 greatest races. You have a whole section of even more races than this, grouped by year, grouped by track, and high quality video. A stunning amount of work that must have gone through with this. Chapters put in here, so you can pull up, certain cautions or restarts, and just a tremendous effort. So big, round of applause to the folks over at, the NASCAR digital media and everybody there. Yes, just absolutely. This is huge. This is huge. And it's interesting both for what is there and what is not there. I know there's people already talking about running other series. I get it. Yeah, totally. Put Busch races on there, Truck Series races, and everything in between. If you really think about the depth of what is out there, it would be great to be able to see a full season on here. It is interesting that there's some races that are not on here. It's interesting perhaps why some races are not on there, why some races are and are not. It almost feels too critical to nitpick about that. I'm interested that, for example, it did not have the 2001 Daytona 500. Probably not surprising there. A little surprising that it has the 2001 Rockingham race. If you didn't want to focus on Dale Earnhardt at all, or the death of Dale Earnhardt, it's kind of interesting to kind of leave that in there. But of course, you got to have the Steve Park finish. You got to have, the Atlanta race in 2001. You got to have the July race at Daytona that year. That's going to be in there. Interesting that, it doesn't have the 1984 or the 1989 races, fall races in Atlanta. Those did have tragic accidents in them. But it does have the June 1988 Pocono race, which has Bobby Allison's accident in it. I didn't think that would be in there. Not to pick and cure ones from there, but just to try to understand why some were not picked. I think some were not picked because of either fatal accidents or very serious accidents, and I can understand that. But Stanley Smith's accidents is in there for the 1993 Talladega race, for example. That is in there. Thankfully, not to the extent that you see on a satellite feed of it there. But that's definitely another aspect of it. But I think really any depiction of NASCAR history, it's got to be, of everything, and I think that really what we see in this, you do see examples of that too. Again, the Allison accident. I do think that there's other races that were excluded for other reasons. Maybe they're just not as memorable. I think especially looking at the Sears point list, I was interested that it didn't have 2003s in there. Robbie Gordon's win, I thought that was a very memorable race, very competitive. You had the road course specialist running well. See, that's where it's kind of interesting. It's like, why these and not those? So I don't think it's entirely just, something awful happened during a race. It could also be perhaps it wasn't a very competitive race. Although it still has the 2000 Daytona 500 in there. It has, I think, the June Michigan race in 1999 that I still remember as being one of the most boring races I ever saw, where nobody seemed like they could do anything with Dale Jarrett, and only one car fell out of the race with Jimmy Spencer. That was kind of their challenge of that too. 96 Talladega is absent. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, but that's all an aside. That's all a different thing. What is critically important on here is the quality of the videos and how uncut things are. Now, I know a lot has changed in the sport, and I know people feel about different things about different aspects of the sport. And again, this kind of dovetails with talking about, serious accidents that have happened in the sport here too. I'm glad they didn't go and blur a lot of things. I'm glad they didn't, let's just approach the elephant in the room here, the Confederate flag. The Confederate flag is going to be a big part about talking about any of these older races, especially the Southern 500. It's just part of it. You can't just clip all that out. It's like the third shot of Days of Thunder. It's just that. And I see that they put like a warning on there for people that, that may be offended by that, but that is a part of the sport's history. It just is. And I think, you can see it, for being an aspect of it there too. But it's just part of the races. You're going to show people in the infield. You're going to see how different things are. I think that the best depiction of history is a frank and honest depiction of it. I think if you blur things, if you clip things out, if you censor things like that, I think you're not going to get a full feel of the way things were in the sport, and just how it's been in there. So I think that's important. And also in that same aspect, it looks like that in a lot of these, they didn't clip out a lot of segments that, maybe addressed topics that maybe they didn't want to talk about. Like, for example, the tribute to J.D. McDuffie is in there. The August 1991 Michigan race. I appreciated that they left that in there. I appreciated that they left in the clip of JD going around the track at Pocono in July of 1991. And when they featured him and said, hey, here's a guy that's having a good run that, missed these accidents. I like that it looked like they kept as much in there as possible, including the other thing that I was worried that was going to get clipped out would be the networks, because, of course, you have all these different networks that cover this. We talk about this in 500 Days. You have the Fox and NBC deal. So you got old races here that are on ESPN, on TBS, on CBS. I like that you still get to see their intros. Not in all of them. 1995's Sears Point race, for example, just jumps right to the race. But there's other ones that you actually get to see the skits that ESPN put together. You get to see TNN's logo. You get to see stuff like that. You get to see the different broadcasters leading into the race. Also mentioning, there's the tobacco branding too. Same thing. I agree. I hadn't thought of that being censored, but yes, that's not either. I'm so glad they didn't do that. I'm glad they didn't, because you wouldn't be able to play the openings of any of these. They say, oh, it's the NASCAR Winston Cup Series, or it's the Nextel Cup, even the Nextel Cup races. Companies that, that don't exist, that got merged into other companies. People may have problems with that. If you clipped a lot of that out, this would, you'd have maybe like 5-minute clips of some of these races. And it would be impossible, because since some of these are like highlight shows from different broadcasts and stuff anyway. So I'm glad they didn't do that. So you gotta keep that stuff in there. You just have to. Okay? You can say what you want about where its place is today. I know people got different opinions on that, and that's fine. That's good. It's good that it's getting discussed. But but history is history. I mean, if I was writing a book about a race that, that featured the Winston Cup Series and the Confederate flag and all these other stuff, I'm going to bring it up there because you got to be able to talk about it. So that's the important thing. And I think that, and I'm glad that we're seeing this in here. So, I've really enjoyed it. I've been clicking through these all this week. Talking about things that, that weren't left out, seeing the segments, seeing the different networks. I was putting together yet another video in the broadcast problems deal that was going to talk about the right way to lead into a race. The pleasure of doing a short, a really concise and interesting lead in to a NASCAR broadcast and why that's important. But I think this does the job way better, because you can watch some of these races and you'll hear the command to start engines in the background while Bob Jenkins is doing his call introducing the race. And you just have a much more interesting lead in because the engines are already fired and you're having the broadcasters on pit road talking over the noise of the engines, everything's happening. And it's so much more exciting and engaging to see, rather than, an hour-long pre-race discussing stuff that everybody's discussed to death on Twitter all week. It's just not the same thing. But even a broadcast with that angle back then is the best way to look at it. So, I know people have been already sharing screenshots and videos and stuff they got, and it's great. The discussions on Twitter this week have been thoroughly enjoyable because everybody's finding all these little nuggets. I'm finding things either I've forgotten or just never seen before. Of course, you got races well back before my time that are, Wide World of Sports productions or CBS productions, and just seeing them in that sense. And then this leads into the next point. The quality of these videos is just incredible. And I know that's been said a lot by many other people here, but the quality of for example, perfect example of this that I can think of, and this is perfect for this week because we got Daytona this week, is talking about the summer races at Daytona. The three versions, the 88, 89, and 1990 races at Daytona. It's very hard to find copies. I've ordered like, DVDs from people that like do DVD rips of these, and always the sound is just blown out and you can't really see things very well. It's very fuzzy copies of it. And God bless people that have saved videotapes and shared them and archived them on YouTube. I'll talk about that next because I think that's another relevant discussion on this. But the quality of these in those particular races is stunning. The audio is pitch perfect. You hear the ESPN music sounds like you're watching it for the first time. I mean, I'm sounding like I'm making too much out of this, but I'm sure everybody else would talk about this. Take it from somebody that was watching some of these races live. It feels just like it. You're seeing the driver pictures are clear. The starting lineup animations are in a lot of these. Again, the little sketches and stuff that would be set up there. I posted screenshots from the 1994 Sears Point race. That is a fun little sketch that they involved a lot of the drivers in. I encourage you to see that if you haven't seen that one yet, because that's really a lot of fun. It's huge. I mean, these are ones I haven't seen this clear since they happened, and extending, up to the current day. I mean, you got the Chicago street courses in here, the Busch Clash is in here, at the Coliseum, things of that nature. So, and that's the other element too, to not treat history as if it's something separate and apart from what the sport is now. Treat it all as a ongoing story. That it is a continuum. It is what happened then is directly connected to what you are seeing today and what you're seeing from other segments there. And that's the great part of it. And, you'll see these mid-race segments. This is something I think for the old broadcast that wouldn't work today. They would have, instead of doing a whole lot of pre-race segments, they would sprinkle them throughout the broadcast, even during green flag racing. I don't think that would work today. But I think you could condense that into the first part of it there and make that work better. So yeah, that's really enjoyable. Now, this is the other aspect of it here. And I got some questions about this earlier this week about especially like putting together videos on YouTube. Where does this fit in with people that archive videos on YouTube? I hope it doesn't change anything. I hope people still upload videos on YouTube and still share videos on YouTube, because there's so much more than just Cup Series races that are out there. First and foremost, you have the Busch Series races, you got the Truck Series races, you got All Pro Series, you got IROC, you got all this other stuff here that's not here that, that we can talk about. And not to mention the Cup races that aren't on here. So it's important that people still share those at the same time. On top of that, you got practice sessions, you got qualifying sessions, you got post-race shows, you got Inside Winston Cup, you got all this other stuff out there that also needs to be seen. And, frankly, for me, when I make, these videos like that I post on my channel, I find it much easier to download, the full version that people have archived on the YouTube and use clips from it that way. So I can search for clips instead of just going and saving 5 seconds here, 10 seconds there. That takes entirely too much time. Maybe some people do it that way, but that's at least not been my approach there. So I hope this doesn't change anything for people that are archiving stuff on YouTube. I hope nobody's taking stuff down. I hope NASCAR's not making anybody take stuff down, because as far as I've heard, I guess there's been some examples of that where but I hope there's not going to be a lot of that. I really hope not, because I think that they serve, the same role here, especially given the fact that this NASCAR Classics thing isn't as, able to be integrated into, something like an Amazon or a Hulu where you can watch YouTube on that and stuff there. So I hope it doesn't change anything there. And I don't plan on having it change anything in terms of which clips I use in projects. I've actually already downloaded the videos I need to use for both Field Fillers series and for 500 Days, as well as for a couple of other projects that I'm working on here at the same time. So do I feel like downloading that stuff again from a whole other site, even if there's some improvement in quality? No, I don't. And in fact, it requires, at least from the way I'm seeing it here, it requires different approach entirely, because it's not, it's not the same thing as a YouTube video there. So I hope that they both coexist. I hope that it's understood as, people that, have access to NASCAR's database here are going to have higher quality videos that you can watch for the first time. And then you can supplement those views with what's on YouTube at the same time too. So if you want to watch a practice or a qualifying session from a race that's on there, I hope that gets seen too. Now, inevitably, this is going to expand, and it should. I hope it doesn't get a whole lot of ads put into it, the fact that this is all for free is extraordinary. And I think that really speaks volumes to where, NASCAR is with, posting old races to begin with. So that's good too. And I hope that that's a positive sign for people that do share videos on YouTube at the same time. So I hope that, again, they both coexist and that it can keep going and they both keep flourishing. Because again, it's the best advertisement for the sport, and it's the best advertisement for, putting together a great broadcast. Now you can see Jim McKay or, any of these announcers. You can see Eli Gold and Bob Jenkins and Larry Newber and all these other guys from many years in the past. It's tremendous. It's tremendous. So this is easily one of the most impressive things I think NASCAR has done. I really do feel, and again, this is from an older fan's perspective. I know I get called a boomer a lot, even though I'm just getting to be 41 here this October. But this to me is a great olive branch to older fans. I hope that, if there's any fans that, have had issues with the sport, whether it's the playoffs, whether it's stage points, whether it's any other number of changes that NASCAR has done over the years, this to me is in the exact same category as bringing back North Wilkesboro or, bringing back reflective numbers on the cars, having foil printed numbers on the cars, or throwback weekend in general, things that the sport has embraced that, really, it can be enjoyed by everybody, that it's not, it's something that's accessible to everybody, that it's not a gatekeeping thing. It's not, this is just for older fans and younger fans aren't going to care about this. It's like, no, you're going to have younger fans that are going to be very excited about this. And they're going to see, sports. You watch those old races at Detroit running on basically what looks like a horse racing track here, and seeing them, fight through lap traffic just as much as they challenge today. And that's what you want. You want that connection with the past and the present. This is what people on the Scene Vault podcast do when they talk about the way racing used to be and they bring up these stories. It's not to dump all over the way it is now, but to make sure you place everything in that context. And this is another step that does that. And so I hope this stays. I hope it flourishes. I hope we get way, way more content on here. There's already more than enough content to keep anybody occupied for any amount of time. I like that they've even, gone to races like the Bristol night race in 1984. Even if they don't have a full broadcast, they'll have a race review of it. That's great. That's tremendous. And those in the same level of quality at the same time too. And I think, the sky's the limit. They could add qualifying sessions and all the other stuff I listed before that you see on YouTube. But that's not going to happen overnight, too. So I think it's nice that, that you have both of these out there, and I hope it does stay out there. And I think for somebody like myself that makes content using old footage, it's definitely something that's more, that's exciting for that too. And I hope that there's going to be a coexistence that's going to still be able to be around with that too. So I think that's tremendous. So, if you guys, I'm sure a lot of you guys have already been checking out this stuff this week. I know a lot of you guys reached out to me about this, and rightfully so. I mean, this is tremendous. I loved watching these old. I think the first race I pulled up was 1992 at Sears Point, and I just heard the Speed World theme in such clarity that I have not heard in a very long time, and that was a thrill. And to hear Bob Jenkins, especially since he's no longer with us, that's huge. That's huge. And this is a way that, and it's really cool to hear what races people are pulling out. They're pulling up the first races they ever went to. It's just incredible. It's still great to see there too. So and I think it's another great advertisement for the sport, just like people that share the races on YouTube too. Because on top of that, you're also going to have people that are going to be sharing their own footage they take from racetracks too. You see some old stuff show up there at the same time, not just current races, but races in the past. So, I think it's amazing. So again, kudos to NASCAR and their digital rights team and everybody else that was involved in this. The thumbnails look great. I know there's the one that has the sim race on there, but come on, even for me, that's picking nits. That's too small. You get a lot of these here. They actually have clips from the race on there. They standardize them. It's very easily searchable. It's just great. It's just great. I'm thrilled. I mean, it's made it. It's another. It can be a bit of a time waster for sure. You can pull yourself into it, but man, it's just the same kind of thing as like pulling up a podcast. But now you got this great video quality. I plan to watch some of those old Daytona summer races this week to kind of get ready for this weekend. I haven't decided whether to 88 through 90. I'll probably just do them in a row there from what we have. I know last time I watched 89 on a videotape. That one's incredible because that's the first year ESPN covered it, and they did a great little sketch there. Duck Jerry Punch is involved in it. I think they filmed it at his house, but that was a lot of kind of a fun little thing there back then. I really enjoyed that there this week, and I know everybody else has at the same time. So we're running a bit long here. We're already about an hour and a half into this. I knew this was going to be pretty long. From everything that was happening this week. And we'll still do trivia here. Do we have a call on inspection yet? I haven't looked at the chat as much. I need to kind of catch up on that at the same time. Clinch the spot, owner points. Okay, here we go. Okay, Pockrass does have the clarification on the Chase Briscoe situation. Left rear lug wouldn't come off. Doesn't appear as a result of anything that happened during the stop. Lug wasn't stripped. It was almost like it became welded to the wheel. The team took the last 5 laps trying to get it off as learning experience, and it didn't budge. Okay, there's why he lost the laps. Okay, so thank you, Pockrass, for catching up on that. I did hear that on the radio, and I was bringing that up there during the race itself. But it's good to get the clarification because they were talking about that left rear for very long. I thought it sounded like flat spotting, but then they were going into great detail about that lug, and it sounds like, yeah, that's what was definitely happening. So big thanks to Pockrass for the follow-up there. I don't see the official call yet here. Well, that's fine. So I got some more content here for you guys at the same time. Thank you for tuning in here, folks. We still got 63 people in here. I wasn't sure we'd get a lot of people with the since the race went by so quickly. But that's definitely the same situation. Do they have the 2004 Nextel Open? I don't know if they do. Do they? They have a lot of all-star races. Let's see. Let me go to 2000. Just kind of pulling it up on the other screen here. It seems to have a lot of the 2000s. That was the other thing too. I was very surprised that it had, the July race at Loudon in 2000. I thought it would skip that one completely, given, of course, the Kenny Irwin story. But you can actually, I think it looks like it has pretty much the whole 2000 season. I know some of these links don't work, but yeah, for those of you that watch 3 Before February or 500 Days, if you ever want to, full experience of what the 2000 season was like, there's definitely that on YouTube at the same time. People put together great playlists and uploads, but it looks like pretty much all of that is on here at the same time. 2000, 2001, where is it? It's got the 2003 Southern 500. Oh, yeah. Just watching some of these. I mean, somebody just puts a huge smile on my face because it's just like, man. No, it does not have the 2004 All-Star race. It does have the 2004 Rockingham race, so you get to see Carl Long flip in HD. I haven't done that yet. Shoot, I should do that. It should have all our good buddies, the field fillers in there. So we'll have, you get Andy Hillenberg and so forth in that one. That'll be on the list. I know that Casey Kane finished there with Matt Kenseth pulls him in, but it's really the field fillers who were the star of that race, for sure. 2005 Daytona 500's in here. The last November Southern 500 in 2004. Yeah, I mean, again, just a tremendous list of races here. So very much enjoyable. You can watch Johnny in the fast white car in real time. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So, no 2004 All-Star race in there. It does have the other Charlotte race. It looks like it's got the fall race and the 600 that year. That wasn't the rain-shortened one. I think 03 was rain-shortened. No, it does not have this. I correct myself. It does not have the 600 from 2004, but it does have the fall race. Fall race was good. That was a barn burner. That was a good one. I think it's the one where Jimmy Johnson... No. Is that the one where Jimmy Johnson got the rear panel knocked off? Or no, Gordon got the panel knocked off, and he still finished second. there was that. It was kind of the Bobby Allison thing over again. That was a good race. 2004 had a lot of good moments. I might not be done with 2004 after field fillers, so you never know. Alrighty. So we'll do trivia questions, and I do have something for show and tell. That was not show and tell, but we'll definitely do that at the same time here. So again, we'll do the categories on the old Trivial Pursuit deal here. Once again, categories are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Any of your questions you guys have, definitely drop them in the chat. I'll kind of browse the chat here too, because I was kind of looking away from it, especially during the segment going over NASCAR classics here. But we'll go into this. NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So definitely put in your votes on that, and we'll pick whichever category will be the one we'll do, and we'll do show and tell here next. So for our show and tell deal here, I have this to bring. Since it was Watkins Glen today, I want to bring up one of the souvenirs I picked up when I covered Watkins Glen in 2018. And our good buddy Charlie Birch has invited us over to his place there back when we were doing the J.D. McDuffie book signing that weekend. I picked this up over at the library that they had there, the NASCAR Research Center, a 1995 program featuring several wonderful highlights of the sport's just recent history from 1986 to 1995, showing there Kyle Petty in the 1993 race there. Of course, he was a winner in 92. You got Irvin in his late battle with Mark Martin and Davey Allison. You got Rusty Wallace versus Ricky Rudd, Tim Richmond, of course, and Mark Martin's dominance there. But yeah, really nice artwork on here. I don't know how well that shows. There you go. You can see that a little better on camera. I kind of move it up here. But very pleased with this. Ricky Rudd's Levi Garrett car shows up there too. So, yeah, what's really cool, it's got the program, it's got the patch there in the middle of it. It's got the entry list. I mean, it's like a brand new copy of this. They had like what's great about it is the Racing Research Center in Watkins Glen. They have a bookstore, and they have like just some extra inventory there that they sell some other NASCAR books or programs or things of that nature. But yeah, this includes an actual little deal here with the marketing tickets there at the track, a little mailer here. Just incredible. Great time capsule for it. I love these old entry lists where it's printed on like different paper. And it's got the Trans Am series entry list. Where is it? Now, there is one thing I want to kind of bring up on this at the same time. And I didn't realize it had this earlier. Oh, there we go. That's pretty good. Now, when I was doing my Chuck Bound video, I didn't realize that this had an entire profile on Chuck Bound in it and mentioning his Busch Series championship. Now, of course, this is 1995, so this is the year after he had the injury at Pocono. But it actually has a whole feature. J.J. O'Malley did this article here called Chuck Bound's Career Has Taken Many Turns. Definitely an understatement for those of you who have seen the video here. But it does a great job. It actually has some great pictures in here of him in the Hensley Racing effort there at the same time. And it covers that. I believe he's got some other pictures here on the next page. I did not use this in the research for the book, but it does have some good pictures here at the same time. It's got a color picture of one of his entries there for Jim Testa in the late 70s. So very cool. He had a little bit of this crossover here at Watkins Glen, and then it ends up having a Chuck Bound feature in it, even though I don't think Bound was even entered in the Watkins Glen race that year. No, I take that back. It does show him entered in there, the number 32 with the active trucking team. I thought he just did a part-time season that year, but it doesn't show it. It does show it's got the North Series there. Dick McCabe showing up. But, yeah. Where is it here? There we go. Got a couple old school paint schemes and so forth in here. Where's the driver? Oh, here we go. One of my all-time favorite paint schemes here again. Ricky Craven's 1995 Kodiak Chevrolet. Just gorgeous. I mean, it's got this great shot of it here. Looks like a bear cage here for sure with the Kodiak bear on the hood. Always loved that paint scheme. Again, white accents on it just really came out. I know Larson ran it as a throwback a couple of years ago, but it doesn't. It was okay, but it didn't cover it quite as well as I would hope it would. It's got some of the driver photos in here. Those are always fun. You get to see some of the paint schemes from '95, the Kendall Oil paint scheme there, and so forth. Actually has Butch Leitzinger listed in the number 40 there, which is interesting. I actually had it updated for road course specialists. Just a little bit unexpected. Usually they would announce that so late that you wouldn't get updates on that. Let's see here. But yeah, as for the Fast Track Performance Driving School, here you go. You got Derek Cope in the Bobby Allison car here. So, of course, the replacement there after Chuck Bound's injury. Cope had a good season that year in '95. Hope you guys enjoyed that in the video, too. That cover illustration that was featured in the Chuck Bound video, that is the one that was put together. Several people had a hand in that. I believe it was Russ Hamilton Sr. took the original picture. The picture was then provided to me by Charlie Birch, who was, again, involved in the J.D. McDuffie book there. The picture was then drawn. A sketch of the actual picture was done by Rob Taylor, our good buddy up in Canada there, that did beautiful artwork on that, did the drawing there. And then the graphics section converted into a cover was done by Ryan Daly, who's involved at, actually did the paint schemes there for Starcom Racing. So it's a thoroughly Derek Cope cover in that. I'm actually in the process of getting those credits properly attributed there in the book itself. As we're getting ready to have that be released as well. So that was kind of the reveal that I included there in the Chuck Bound video there about midway through. And then, yeah, some of the other classic paint schemes from that. But yeah, really pretty cool there from that. Again, a little bit of Watkins Glen history along the way there and in the 1995 season. And also a bit of a crossover there with Chuck Bound and his story there at the same time. So definitely check that out there too. Bowser Jr., thank you for the super chat there. Sorry I don't have margin of victory today. Busy moving. Yeah, no worries, man. But thank you so much for the super chat. Absolutely. Alrighty. Let's see here. And, okay. So, we'll do some questions here. Which category do we have? Brad, okay. Wild card tracks. I'm seeing 3 for tracks. 2 for drivers. Here we go. Racing Johnny Benson again. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, raw satellite feeds are the best, Clint will. Absolutely. There we go. I was using rabbit ears until 1992. Yeah, I see that too, RD Fox. Yeah. Again, I mean, that's a great thing with these broadcasts is there's the clarity is amazing. Not just the visuals, but the sound. Yeah, and it's so different from what's on YouTube because YouTube has so much more content, and all that too. That it's nice that it's kind of its own thing. So that's good to see. Alrighty. So let's do tracks. I think that looks like that was kind of the leader there in the category. So we'll do a couple tracks questions and we'll wrap up the show for today. Do we have any other call in on inspection? I don't see anything here. Just to make sure. Yeah, I do see that. Yes, the interviews with Harvick and Keselowski. Alrighty. Let's see. All right, first question. What was the original name of the spring race? Oh, excuse me. Let me start over. What was the original name of the spring race held at The Rock? Now, by original, I don't know how far it means to go back, but we'll see. What was the original name of the spring race held at the Rock? Bowser Jr., what was my favorite race to rewatch on classics? I mean, the Sears Point ones for sure. Actually, last bro and I were pulling up the 94 race there, and we wanted to see if we could see ourselves in the stands. We kind of recognized the banners at the top of the grandstands because that's where I took pictures during practice that weekend. And there's some pictures that I've shared since then of that weekend. But that was probably an enjoyable one there for sure. I feel like I pulled that one up more often than others. It wasn't the most competitive Sears Point race. Or Irvin dominated that race pretty much like William Byron did the Watkins Glen race today. But I still thought it was really good. What was the original name of the spring race held at the Rock? I guess it's for Carolina 500. North Carolina 400, North Carolina 500. All right, here we go. What was the original name of the spring race held at the Rock? All right, and the answer is Peach Blossom 500. Oh, Andrew Bremner, you got it. Peach Blossom 500. I don't remember if we've had that one before or not. Excuse me, my allergy medicine is wearing off today. Peach Blossom 500. Excuse me, was the original name. Peach Blossom 500. All right. Oh, this question almost sounds like a matter of opinion. But here, I'll go ahead and read it off here. What track is famed for hosting the most outrageous pre-race shows? What track is famed for hosting the most outrageous pre-race shows? What track? Not necessarily what event, but what track? What track is famed for hosting the most outrageous pre-race shows? Yeah, I don't see any updates on that. That one year they did a Batman event. There you go. Seeing a lot of votes for Charlotte. Seeing a lot of votes for Charlotte. Okay, here we go. What track is famed for hosting the most outrageous pre-race shows? And the answer is indeed Charlotte. You guys got it. You guys got it. That's a Humpy Wheeler question there. Charlotte is indeed the correct answer. Let's see. Where is... Might test this here while we're doing this. Not that one. Surprised it has a 1991 All-Star race in here. That one wasn't very good. The All-Star races it does include the Open. I've seen that. Oh, I should watch it. See, they have 94s on here. The Chuck Mound crash. Those pictures that Hallman got of that in particular were very impressive. Like of the actual wreck. Because it's in the original one, it's so hard to see. Oh, he does have it. He does have it. Yeah, they do have it here. Excellent. Yeah, the 94 All-Star race. One of these days, I'm going to figure out how to play videos on here to get the sound worked out. I know when I was playing the Mark Martin interview a while back, that was... Oh, there we go. Did that sound go through? I don't know if it did. I heard it on mine, but I don't know if it worked on you. Let me just test this. Can you guys hear this? I'm not sure if anybody heard that. 94 Coke 600. Why is technical inspection taking so long? I have no idea. Oh, you could hear it. Okay, great. All right, right on. Okay, cool. You can. All right, let me do this. I want to test this here and see, yeah. Does this show up well on screen? There you go. I got my big face in the way. Hang on. Can I mute that? Come on. But yeah, this is probably one I've watched more often, yeah.
ESPN, the world's leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. Today, live from Sears Point International Raceway near Sonoma, California, it's the Save Mart Supermarkets 300 NASCAR Winston Cup race. We had some fog in the Sonoma Valley earlier today. However, that's burned off, giving way to bright, sunshiny skies and a temperature in the 70s. A beautiful day for racing. And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bob Jenkins. Welcome to Sears Point.
Right in the fields.
It's been over a month since we televised a NASCAR race for you, and since then,
Okay. No, I wasn't going to watch the whole thing, but I was just going to see if it actually works on here, because I like to integrate the second screen a little bit more often into the show here, but I can never tell if it's actually playing sound or not. But I'm glad that's working. Yeah. No, what's great about these is just pulling up those old ESPN intros. 93s is pretty good. Does 93 have the one with the 93 or 94? One of them has like that thing where it's like the computer, it looks like it's like a very Top Gun looking thing. I'm not making any sense. I think probably was 93. Maybe it was. The loading times aren't too bad on this. It actually kind of loads it there. Oh, here we go. Yeah.
ESPN, the world's leader in motorsports coverage, is live at Sears Point Raceway in California for the Save Mart 300 NASCAR Winston Cup race. Beautiful weather here in Northern California. Not a cloud in the sky and nice warm temperatures.
There we go. Yeah. No, it's hard to tell. Like that one's like the 92. I mean, the classic, the first one was like the classic ESPN intro. And then they started getting fancy with it. Yeah, 94's. 94 is probably the one where they had like the little car at the bottom of the screen. Then you got like the later ones. Yeah, they should just put like a whole lot of those together. Yeah, I don't know if we can watch the full thing on here or not. It'd probably take the stream down or something, but I don't know. Has anybody done that yet? I haven't really watched anybody else's channel or something like that where they've just pulled up an old race or something like that and just kind of seeing it. But that would be interesting. But we'll let's see here. And we could. Does anybody have any requests? Like if there's anyone that they're particularly interested in seeing, or I don't like doing the reaction channel kind of thing, but I guess it's basically what this would end up being. So that would be it. Yes, that's right. NASCAR Classics does have a YouTube channel. Clint Will, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, they do have that too. All right, I'm going to end up just playing the 94 one because the 94 one has the intro. Let's get that one at least pulled up because that's a lot of fun. I mean, my face will be in the way, but...
It starts out fast, uphill and on the edge.
Oh, and Kendall spins right in front. Oh, and collects Earnhardt. Can you believe that?
It's all downhill from there. On the brakes, on the gas, and you hope you stay out of the grass.
The essence, you gotta be fast. You gotta be careful or you'll end up on your grass.
Those of you calling for green Sears points, that's pretty much what it would look like.
2 more turns, you're clean so far. Then comes a hairpin with room for only one car.
Rudd is going to try to outbrake Jeff Bodine. Bodine trying to So now what's going to happen?
Bodine is going to get the lead back. That's what's going to
And
happen.
here comes Rudd going to try to take the lead back from Bodine, Bob.
Smooth is the fast way.
Just letting it all hang out's my way.
It doesn't matter which way as long as you get here first.
ESPN, the world's leader in motorsports coverage, welcomes you live to the Valley of the Moon, about 45 miles north of San Francisco. Sears Point Raceway on a cool and mostly cloudy Sunday. It's the NASCAR Winston Cup Save Mart Supermarkets 300, the first of 2 road course races in the series. The quest for the Cup standings finds Ernie Irvan, who has won twice on road courses, leading by 25 over Dale Earnhardt. Among the others in the top 5, only Mark Martin has a road course win. 3 drivers in the second 5 have victories on road courses: Rusty Wallace, Ricky Rudd, and Kyle Petty. Rusty lost his points lead here last year and never regained it. Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Jenkins, and welcome to Sears Point.
I mean, that's fantastic quality there. I mean, I just, yeah, that just amazes me. That's just, I mean, even on this headset, it only comes through the left channel here, but it just sounds so good. Yeah, that's what it's all about. I don't know how many races they're going to upload, but yeah. I don't know if anybody's interested. I mean, I don't know if there was an issue with like doing like a watch along or something like that, but maybe, you know, again, the tail end of a show like this probably isn't the right time to do a watch along thing, but maybe we'll do something like that. We pull up an older race. That'd be a good, fun way to kind of fill time during the off season or something like that. I mean, it would be, you know, something like that. Let's see. I got a request for 2002 Watkins Glen. Let's see. That was one where the 21 car was finishing last before. I love this search, though. His search is just so much easier to use. It's great. You can just see the evolution of the different broadcasts. So, yeah. Yeah, the 94 one was really good.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Yeah, goes full circle. What are you over with the ball? I haven't watched too many from this year.
Today, the road to the Winston Cup Championship travels across the road course at Watkins Glen. You're watching NASCAR on NBC. Subway welcomes you to NASCAR Winston Cup Racing at the road course at Watkins Glen. Something wacky always happens in a road course race. Something wacky will happen today. And here to call it for you, 3 guys that will watch this race very closely, then practice everything they learned on the way to the airport. Alan, Wally, and Benny.
Benny's driving. We should be okay, Bill. Hey, let's talk pit strategy for a minute, BP. When you make your pit stops has become huge in these road course races.
I mean, you would think that fuel mileage wouldn't be important on a road course, but you're exactly right. This is where all that pit strategy, track position started years ago. When you get to your window, you can make it the rest of the way on fuel, stop, and then hope the caution flag comes out. Everyone else has to stop behind you. You're in front. Then all you got to do is stay in front the rest of the day.
There are 5 drivers in the field you'd consider road course ringers, guys who are not regulars on the Winston Cup circuit and whose backgrounds are in road racing. Can one of those ringers come up and beat the regulars today?
Well, I think so, because in the past, when those guys come in for the one-offs, the teams one-offs as well. So the pits, like Benny was saying, the pit stops are very, very important. But this time you got Scott Pruitt, P.J. Jones, some of these guys with teams that run every weekend. So they can get them in and out of the pits, hopefully close to where they come in, and that's real important. So, yeah, I think they've got a shot.
This is the 20th NASCAR Winston Cup race here at Watkins Glen. Hall of Famer Buck Baker won the first one in 1957. The 90 laps to determine today's winner begins next. And now the Walmart starting grid for today's Watkins Glen race, alongside Ricky Rudd on the front row. Mikey Waltrip, his best ever road course time trial effort.
On the inside of row 2 is Tony Stewart. On the
can't give you too
outside,
much of a
Bill
reaction
Elliott
here,
going
but
for
yeah.
3 wins in a row.
Ryan Newman's been one of the hottest drivers on the circuit of late. 4 straight top 5 finishes. Kevin Harvick, he'll have to drop to the back. They've changed engines during the weekend.
Robbie Gordon, the guy with a real chance to win today, and Matt Kenseth, very good in practice yesterday.
Kurt Busch placed 4th in his first Winston Cup road course race. That was out at Sears Point in California, and Rusty Wallace trying to regain the Road King crown from Jeff Gordon.
On the inside of row 6 is Bobby Hamilton. This is his best start ever at Watkins Glen. And Jimmy Johnson, second in the points, will go to the rear of the field.
Todd Bodine in row number 7 with P.J. Jones in A.J. Foyt's number 14 car this week, his 5th Watkins Glen start.
Mark Martin, 3 wins here at Watkins Glen, and Jeff Green, Rebestos rookie.
Dale Jarrett, couple of trips off into the sand traps that Dave Burns showed you on Discover Card Countdown to the Green. He'll hope to keep it on the fairways this year.
On the inside of row 10 is Scott Pruitt. Let's try to talk. Scott Pruitt, Benny Parsons, you got me?
I got you, Benny. Go ahead.
It just feels like a whole
Okay, you're like the gunslinger
reality.
coming into town to try to win this race. Can you do it?
Well, a little bit of luck. Isn't exactly where we had planned on starting the target machine, but you know how it is. A little bit of luck, right strategy. These guys are a good group of guys. We've had a very fast car here all weekend, all except for qualifying, so who knows? Stay tuned. Keep an eye on me.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to. What happened in qualifying?
Music, but that's okay.
Oh, we just got greedy.
I mean, see, that's the other
We knew
advantage.
that we
of people
couldn't get the
posting
job done if we were pushing, so I said, let's loosen this thing up, try to really yank one off here, see if we can put it on the front row, and just stepped over, got real loose, and just lost a lot of time. Disappointing, but we do got a fast machine here today.
Good luck to you, Scott.
Scott Pruitt driving
Hey,
the
Jerry
41
Dayton,
target
still the
machine for
buckshot
Chip
car.
Ganassi that Jimmy Spencer normally wheels. That was a topic of some discussion in qualifying. Spencer got into a number 42 car, was not fast enough to make the field on time, didn't have any owner points for that machine. Jimmy's watching the race at home today. Got 4 drivers going to drop to the rear of the field because of engine changes during the weekend, and it's a big story where the championship picture is concerned because the top 2 in points will
Joe
go to the
Vardy.
back.
There you
Sterling
go.
Marlin and Jimmy
There's
Johnson,
some
along with
obscurity.
Kevin
Wow.
Harvick and road racer Joe Vardy. There are those
Oh,
who
my
didn't
goodness.
qualify, and like I said, Jimmy Spencer, kind of the big
Justin
headline.
Bell,
of
I
that
think he was in an old
And
50
Austin
red
Cameron
car.
out of NASCAR Winston West
46. Was he or him or
came out here
him
trying
or
to
Brandon
qualify,
Ash.
could not
They
do it.
both Had like old Robert Yates cars.
All right, before they start here at Watkins Glen, let's check some final stories on pit road. Marty?
Well, Alan, Ryan Newman's week started good. He qualified 5th, but he's an avid fisherman, so after qualifying, went out fishing on Friday, caught 0 fish. The team did fine. After happy hour on Saturday, went out fishing, caught 0 fish. He was getting frustrated, so he went out while he was waiting for a table for dinner Saturday night and caught 1 fish. He said, hey, my luck is turning around. Who knows? The rookie may land a road course win today. Dave Burns?
Marty, last week at Indianapolis, Matt Kenseth had a great finish of 3rd. It moved him up to 9th in the points, 1 spot. But after
Maybe
what
we'll
he
just do the
characterizes
start
as a
here
very
and then
mediocre
wrap up
test
our
session here at the Glen,
about that?
how do you capitalize?
That's Robbie Gordon making the inside move.
And Robbie Gordon on the inside of Tony Stewart goes to the 4th position.
And Michael Waltrip with a quick look on road for the lead.
That was a good move by Robbie. Yeah, break what, 2 or 3 cars there?
To the 77 car of Blaney, and was that the 26 of Todd Bodine making contact in the S's.
Here's Robbie Gordon on Bill Elliott for 3rd and quickly through.
Singular car,
This
bad
is the
fast.
inner loop.
They have good camera angles today. Kind of reminiscent of this a little bit. Oh, that's so good. Oh, it's so good.
That camera won't make the day.
No, he won't.
Watch Robbie here. He may set him up for this left-hander, but he also, yep.
Oh, going for second.
He got him.
Side of Michael Waltrip. And using all the pavement, and then some.
Robbie was so
Robbie Gordon told us in their Discover Card
So
Countdown to Green that he felt like this year's car was better than last year's car.
7th to 2nd in 1 lap. That's pretty impressive.
This next guy may be a little bit harder to get around.
Well, hey, we'll probably end up just watching the whole thing here. Maybe one of these days. I mean, if there's no issue with doing a stream with it or something like that, if you guys are interested in doing like a full race one, we'll have to do something. Maybe we'll do something where it's like tied into whatever races that weekend or something. That would probably be fun. because I was already thinking about watching like an old Daytona race. Yeah, if you guys are interested, we can give that a try. And worst thing happens if it's not monetized. I think that's not the end of the world. So we can just do that just for fun. But yeah, so I think that's let's see. Let me see here. Do we have any other calls here on the inspection? We'll probably just wrap up the show here for tonight and do that. But again, I'm not really, I don't do the best at the reaction videos, or at least I haven't really done that much of it. But I did a thing in 2015. I think it was 2015 or 2016. I was going to do a video thing where I'm filming myself like while watching these races, and I was going to put together like a super cut. But there's too many times where I'm sitting there just like that. We're just like this. And it's just like, yeah, it wasn't very interesting to look at. So, yeah, but maybe that'll be something there. Yeah, maybe some over the off season. That'd probably be easier. I'm getting pretty busy with that. That was 2002 at Watkins Glen. So if you're interested in seeing the rest of that, that's of course on the NASCAR Classics page there. So yeah. Let's see here. No, I don't see anything on inspection. So I don't know what's taking so long on that there. Alrighty. Nope. Do we have anything on J-Ski yet? I guess we don't. Alrighty. Nope. I don't see that one either. Oh, that's right. Yeah, even forgetting until seeing Dustin Albino's article here that Denny Hamlin finishing second today after the last place run at Watkins Glen or Sears Point this year. So, of course, that kind of came out of nowhere too. I guess both of them had they both have stage wins. I guess both McDowell and Hamlin did. I don't know. That'd be interesting. Alrighty. Well, it's been a long enough show. I'm not going to make you hang on here any longer on that too. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I had a little bit of everything tonight, but I hope you enjoyed that too. The website, lastcar.info, the article will be up later tonight. Pending the results of post-race inspection. Looks like it's going to be our favorite driver there, Michael McDowell. But we'll see if there's any change in that result there afterwards. We'll find out. Twitter feed, at LastCarOnBrock, and the deal there. I guess this is another thing we need to talk about too. So, before we go full on into this, I mean, I usually do the show like right after a Cup Series race. This week's going to be a little bit different because we're going to have that Truck Series race in Milwaukee. Conceivably, I could do the show after the Milwaukee race, but I'm guessing that the Cup Series race at Daytona is probably going to have more dramatics where it's going to be the cutoff for the playoffs and all that. So maybe what we'll do is we'll still do the show after the Cup Series race at Daytona, and then we'll lump Milwaukee into the following week's show. Is everybody okay with that? That'll probably be okay? I think that'll probably be a better way to do it because Daytona is I'm sure going to have plenty enough stuff that's going to be going on there. That'll be the case. Oh, did Tech just get cleared? Oh, goodness. Well, hey, perfect timing. Let's take another look at it. Still seeing it here. Is it on Pockrass's list? Yeah. I'm not seeing it. Where are you guys seeing it? But, yeah. Everybody but Last gets disqualified for an oversized engine. Yeah, you never know. You never know. Tech is done. No issues. Okay. I'll take your word for it. I don't see it on Pockrass's list. Unless it's already been. Unless you're just joking. That's okay. But, yeah. But more than likely, yeah, it'll be a McDowell article here tonight. So we'll find out there. Hendrick Motorsports tweeted it. Yeah, okay, let me see. Well, Hendrick Motorsports, they have kind of a vested interest in saying it early, don't they? I'm not sure if I'd entirely believe them first. There it is. Yeah, 2 minutes ago. Tech inspection cleared. William Byron's officially your winner. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, you're right. I should mention it in the community post there for the next thing. I'll probably do the show on Saturday night, and then, yeah, I'll mention that there too. So that should be the case. So yeah, I'll call it here for the show here, this one, and then I'll make the mention on that. Yeah, that's a Hendrick tweet. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Pending results of post-race inspection, we'll do that. It'll probably still be a McDowell article, but we're going to find out one way or the other here. They are taking a very long time. I do need to step away, though, here for just a minute. So I'll probably go ahead and just wrap up the show here. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. LastCar.info is the website. At LastCarOnBrock is the Twitter page. Our next show will be Saturday night after the Cup Series race at Daytona. We will not do a show after the Milwaukee action on Sunday. We'll lump that into the next week. I'll do a community post on that. I think that's a good idea, and that'll probably clear that out. Yeah, maybe announcing Byron cleared inspection. That's true. That could be a different one. So we'll find out. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We'll look into doing like a watch along there or something like that if you guys are interested in that, and we can work that out. And I think we'll just kind of go from there. So have a great evening, everyone, and I'll see you all on Saturday night.